My name is Lila Harper, and for the last 5 years, I've been working at a company that prides itself on innovation but hides its ugliest truths behind closed doors. It's called Nexus Dynamics, a name meant to evoke cutting-edge technology and forward-thinking solutions. But if you peel back the shiny surface, what you find is something far less inspiring: power struggles, toxic leadership, and an environment where loyalty means nothing unless it serves the bottom line. I'm not someone who likes confrontation. In fact, I've always preferred staying in the background, quietly doing my job with precision and care. My role as a project manager gave me just enough visibility to make meaningful contributions without stepping into the spotlight too often. That was until everything changed. And by everything, I mean my life, my career, and even how I saw myself. It started on a Tuesday morning, one of those days when the office buzzed with caffeine-fueled energy after a sluggish Monday. The sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our open-concept workspace, casting long shadows across sleek desks and ergonomic chairs. Everyone seemed busy typing away, answering emails, or huddled in impromptu meetings. Everything looked normal, except for me. I had spent most of the weekend preparing for today's presentation, poring over data, tweaking slides, and rehearsing key points until they were seared into my memory. This wasn't just any project. This was my project. A year ago, I'd pitched an idea to streamline operations using AI-driven analytics. At first, no one paid much attention. But slowly, thanks to persistence and late nights spent proving its potential, I managed to get approval. Now, after months of hard work, we were ready to roll out the pilot program. And standing there in front of the executive boardroom, clutching my tablet like a lifeline, I felt both excited and terrified. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and expensive cologne, a scent that always made me think of privilege and authority. Around the table sat some of the highest-ranking executives at Nexus Dynamics, including CEO Victor Langston. He was a man known for his sharp suits, sharper tongue, and an uncanny ability to intimidate anyone who dared cross him. To say he didn't approve of me would be putting it mildly. From day one, he dismissed my ideas as impractical, my efforts as naive. Yet here I was about to present something that could revolutionize the company and possibly prove him wrong. "Good morning," I began, my voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in my chest. "Thank you all for taking the time to hear about the progress we've made with the AI optimization initiative." As I launched into my presentation, I noticed subtle shifts in body language. Some executives leaned forward, intrigued. Others scribbled notes. Even Victor, usually so stoic, raised an eyebrow, a small victory, but one I clung to nonetheless. By the time I wrapped up, I felt confident. Sure, there might still be questions, maybe even skepticism, but overall, the response seemed positive. That confidence lasted exactly 3 minutes. "Lila," Victor said, his tone clipped as he addressed me directly for the first time. "While your numbers are impressive, I can't help but wonder why you didn't consult more closely with senior management before moving forward. You've essentially gone rogue on this." Rogue. The word hit me like a slap. Rogue implied recklessness, defiance, none of which described my meticulous approach. Before I could respond, another executive chimed in, echoing Victor's sentiment. Then another. Suddenly, the air turned thick with accusations, each one chipping away at the foundation I'd built. By the end of the meeting, I walked out feeling hollow, betrayed. What should have been a moment of triumph had become a disaster. And worse, I knew this wasn't really about the project, it was about control. About sending a message. 2 days later, I received a formal letter from HR. It cited vague policy violations and suggested disciplinary action might follow. Reading between the lines, it was clear Victor wanted me gone. Humiliated, broken. But instead of crumbling under the weight of his threats, something inside me snapped. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was desperation. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the realization that I deserved better than to let someone like him dictate my worth. I decided to fight back, not just against Victor, but against the entire culture of fear and manipulation that defined Nexus Dynamics. Little did I know, this decision would set off a chain reaction neither of us could have anticipated. The next few weeks were a blur of legal consultations, sleepless nights, and endless strategizing. I hired a lawyer named Marcus Reed, a no-nonsense professional with a reputation for taking down corporate giants. Together, we began gathering evidence. Emails showing how I'd repeatedly sought input from senior management, only to be ignored, performance reviews highlighting my contributions, and testimonials from colleagues who supported my work. Each piece of documentation felt like armor, shielding me from the storm brewing around me. But fighting back came with consequences. Rumors spread like wildfire throughout the office. Some people avoided me altogether, afraid of being associated with someone labeled difficult. Others whispered behind my back, calling me reckless or self-serving. Through it all, I tried to stay focused, reminding myself why I was doing this. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in, whispering cruel lies about failure and futility. One evening, after yet another exhausting day, I found myself sitting alone in a dimly lit coffee shop near my apartment. The barista had forgotten to add sugar to my latte, but I didn't bother correcting her. Instead, I stared out the window, watching raindrops streak down the glass like tears. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to feel the weight of everything, the exhaustion, the fear, the anger. It was overwhelming. "You look like you could use some company." The voice startled me. Turning, I saw a man standing beside my table, his dark hair damp from the rain and his leather jacket slightly askew. There was something disarming about him. Maybe it was the warmth in his eyes, or the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. Either way, I nodded, gesturing for him to sit. "I'm Daniel," he introduced himself, sliding into the seat across from me. "And you're Lila, right? How do you know my name?" I asked, instantly wary. He chuckled softly. Word travels fast in tech circles, especially when someone stands up to Victor Langston. His words caught me off guard. Was he here to judge me? To warn me? Whatever his intentions, I braced myself for whatever came next. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he continued, sensing my unease. "In fact, I admire what you're doing. Takes guts to stand up to someone like him." We talked for hours that night, sharing stories, exchanging perspectives. Daniel worked as a freelance consultant, helping startups navigate complex challenges. Unlike many people I'd encountered recently, he listened without judgment, offering thoughtful insights rather than empty platitudes. By the time we parted ways, I realized two things. First, I hadn't felt this understood in ages. Second, Daniel might just become an unexpected ally in my battle against Nexus Dynamics. Over the following weeks, Daniel and I grew closer. Our conversations shifted from strategy sessions to deeper topics, dreams, fears, regrets. Slowly, I began to see him not just as a supporter, but as someone who truly cared about me. His presence brought light to the darkest corners of my life, reminding me that there was more to living than surviving corporate warfare. Meanwhile, the legal battle intensified. Documents surfaced implicating Victor in unethical practices, forcing him onto the defensive. Allies within the company reached out, offering support and insider information. With each new development, I gained strength, fueled not only by determination but also by the hope Daniel inspired in me. Yet, amidst the chaos, I couldn't shake the feeling that this fight was about more than justice. It was about reclaiming my identity, rediscovering who I was beyond the confines of Nexus Dynamics. And perhaps, along the way, finding love in the unlikeliest of places. As the legal battle raged on, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions: anger, fear, determination, and something else I couldn't quite name. Something that bloomed every time Daniel sent me a text asking how I was holding up, or showed up at my door with takeout when he knew I'd been working late. He had this way of making everything feel lighter, even if only for a moment. His calm demeanor was like an anchor in the storm, keeping me grounded when the waves threatened to pull me under. One evening, after another grueling day of depositions and document reviews, Daniel invited me to meet him at a quiet park near the river. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, and the air carried the crispness of autumn. I hesitated before agreeing. I wasn't sure I wanted to step away from the fight, even for a few hours, but something about his tone made it impossible to say no. When I arrived, he was sitting on a bench overlooking the water, a thermos of coffee between his hands. "I figured you could use a break," he said as I approached. His smile was soft, almost shy, but there was a steadiness in his gaze that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in years. "I don't know if I can afford breaks right now," I admitted, sinking onto the bench beside him. "Every second feels critical." He nodded thoughtfully, unscrewing the cap of the thermos and pouring steaming coffee into the lid. "Here," he said, handing it to me. "You're allowed to breathe, Lila. You're allowed to rest. Fighting doesn't mean running yourself into the ground." His words struck a chord deep within me. For so long, I'd equated survival with constant motion, as if stopping would mean losing. But here, in this peaceful corner of the world, with Daniel's quiet strength beside me, I began to realize that resilience wasn't just about enduring. It was about finding moments of peace amidst the chaos. We sat there for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He told me stories from his travels, about the quirky startups he'd worked with, and the lessons they taught him. In turn, I shared fragments of my past. The dreams I'd once had before life at Nexus Dynamics consumed me, the fears I carried about what might happen if I lost this fight. With each confession, I felt a little more weight lift off my shoulders. By the time we left the park, I didn't want the night to end. Neither did Daniel, apparently, because he suggested we grab dinner at a small diner tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. It was cozy, unpretentious, a far cry from the sleek corporate restaurants where I'd spent countless meals networking with colleagues who barely remembered my name outside of work events. Over burgers and fries, our conversation shifted again, this time toward the future. Not the immediate future filled with court dates and strategy sessions, but the distant one, the one beyond Nexus dynamics. "What do you want?" Daniel asked suddenly, leaning back in his chair. His question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that, not really. Not since I'd entered the corporate world and let ambition dictate my choices. I don't know, I admitted, fiddling with a French fry. For so long, I thought success meant climbing the ladder, proving myself. But now, I trailed off, unsure how to articulate the shift I'd begun to feel inside. "Now," he prompted gently. "Now I think maybe success is about freedom," I said slowly, testing the words. "Freedom to choose who I am and what I stand for. Freedom to live without constantly looking over my shoulder." Daniel smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That sounds like a damn good definition of success to me." The days that followed were a blur of activity. Evidence mounted against Victor and his inner circle, thanks in part to the insider information provided by brave colleagues who finally spoke out. One by one, cracks began to form in the polished facade of Nexus Dynamics. Anonymous tips led to investigations, and soon enough, whispers of corruption reached the ears of journalists hungry for scandal. Through it all, Daniel remained by my side. He accompanied me to meetings with Marcus, offering insights from his experience working with other companies embroiled in similar scandals. He stayed up late helping me sift through documents, his sharp mind catching details I might have missed. And when the stress became overwhelming, he reminded me to take a step back, to remember why I was fighting in the first place. But it wasn't just his support that kept me going, it was the growing connection between us. We weren't just allies anymore, we were partners in every sense of the word. There were stolen kisses in parking garages after strategy sessions, laughter-filled walks through city streets during rare moments of downtime, and quiet nights spent curled up on my couch watching old movies. Each interaction deepened the bond we shared, until it became clear that whatever happened with Nexus Dynamics, Daniel would be part of my life moving forward. Still, there were moments of doubt. As the case gained traction, the pressure intensified. Victor retaliated with smear campaigns, spreading lies about me to anyone who would listen. Colleagues I trusted turned cold, their loyalty swayed by fear of retaliation. Even friends outside of work grew distant, unsure how to navigate the public spectacle my life had become. It was during one particularly low point that Daniel showed up at my apartment unannounced, carrying a bottle of wine and a bag of groceries. "Cooking therapy," he announced, setting everything down on the counter. No arguments. For the next few hours, we chopped vegetables, stirred pots, and laughed despite the heaviness hanging over us. By the time dinner was ready, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Sitting across from him at my tiny kitchen table, candlelight flickering between us, I realized how much I'd come to rely on him, not just as a supporter, but as someone who truly understood me. "You're amazing, you know that," he said softly, reaching across the table to take my hand. "Not because of what you're doing to Victor, but because of who you are. Strong, kind, fearless." Tears welled in my eyes, and I squeezed his hand tightly. "I wouldn't be able to do any of this without you," I confessed. "You've been my rock." "And you've been mine," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." As winter settled over the city, bringing frosty mornings and twinkling holiday lights, the legal proceedings reached a tipping point. A whistleblower came forward with damning evidence, a series of emails detailing illegal practices orchestrated by Victor himself. The media exploded with headlines, and overnight, Nexus Dynamics went from being a symbol of innovation to a cautionary tale of greed and corruption. Victor fought back with everything he had, pouring resources into PR campaigns and legal defenses. But the tide had turned, and no amount of spin could erase the truth. Investors pulled funding, clients severed ties, and employees staged protests demanding accountability. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that justice might actually prevail. Amidst the chaos, Daniel and I found solace in each other. Our relationship blossomed, becoming a source of strength and joy in a world that often felt bleak. On Christmas Eve, he surprised me with tickets to a cozy cabin in the mountains, a retreat from the madness of a city. Snow blanketed the landscape, muffling sound and creating a sense of stillness I hadn't experienced in years. Standing on the porch wrapped in a blanket, Watching snowflakes drift lazily to the ground, I turned to Daniel and smiled. Do you think we'll ever get used to quiet like this? He chuckled, pulling me closer. Probably not. But that's okay. Quiet is nice, but so is knowing we can handle loud. I rested my head against his shoulder, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful, not just about the outcome of the case, but about the future waiting for us beyond it. As the legal battle finally concluded, Victor's empire crumbled under the weight of his own deceit. Nexus Dynamics was dismantled, its toxic culture exposed for the world to see. I stood victorious but humbled, knowing the fight had changed me in ways I never expected. Daniel and I grew closer with each passing day, our bond forged in adversity, blossoming into something unshakable. On a quiet spring morning, he took me back to that park by the river where it all began. With the sun warming our faces and the sound of birdsong filling the air, he got down on one knee and asked me to spend the rest of my life with him. Tears streaming down my cheeks, I said yes. In the end, what started as a story of corporate revenge became something far greater, a testament to resilience, love, and the courage to rewrite your own narrative. And as we walked hand in hand toward an uncertain but hopeful future, I knew one thing for certain. Sometimes, life's biggest mistakes lead to its greatest blessings.